Welcome to episode 53 of Mindful Drawing. I'm Rux's and today we're going to explore unmapping our mind, unraveling some of the stress and chaos by using drawing to provide it with a bit of structure and this guided meditation practice to bring awareness and attention to how we engage here with the paper and the page and our pen or pencil that we draw with, but also how that might extend out into our everyday practice of engaging with the world, exercising our ability to be adaptable, practicing, having strong, clear intentions, but allowing for a light, nuanced stroke. What we decide to practice and bring our attention to in these moments of meditation, whether it be through drawing or sitting in silence, breath counting, or any other type of meditation, guided or otherwise, helps us extend that practice out into our day and provides us with a fallback that we can engage with when things become heavy or overwhelming. We need to search for that center and relaxation. Reach into these techniques and see if they can help you realign and adapt and find your resilience throughout the day. A quick realization from the future: there was a little miscommunication between the camera and the visual field. And while the focus is wonderfully on my hands, the engagers and actors of this act of drawing, the drawing itself is a little bit blurry, which perhaps aligns with this exercise, and it's okay to let your eyes drift into that state of unfocus, let your mind relax into a bit of unfocus and emptiness, and just follow along with the words without a concern if what you draw looks or behaves anything like what's happening here on the screen. All we need today is some kind of paper, something to draw on, a pen or pencil, or anything else you like to work with. Go ahead and grab your tools, get settled. We'll do a little warm-up to find our body position and connect throughout the whole system, prepare ourselves to engage with this practice of mindful drawing. Come along with me and let's draw together. For the warm-up today, maybe just a bit of a stretching, preparing position exercise, rolling the shoulders back a few times and rolling them forward a few times to kind of find our position here. Maybe giving the spine a little bit of a rotation from the hips up through to the shoulders, just to find position in the chair wherever you're sitting. Maybe extending the arms out if you have space, and then bringing them in to where you engage with your shoulder blades, just to loosen up all of that chain. And finally, giving some time with the hands to let them open wide, palms up for a while, and then relax into their resting state. And open wide, palms down, a lot of curl to the fingers. And let them relax into their resting state. And just begin on a fresh page or sheet of paper. We'll jump right into the longer exercises today. I'm finding one of those days where jumping between meetings and events and class and all sorts of things with projects, and it's maybe a time to let the act of drawing here and a little mindful practice create some kind of structure or map to the mind. Something to just center and guide us. And for that, thinking to begin with some simple branching shapes, starting anywhere on the page and extending a line with a little bit of a bend in it or two that might start to be a bit of a branch, just kind of an open angle where you can take either extension of this bent line and begin another one forking off and bending again. A little elbow there, just to direct and redirect the line through space, extending from any place along one segment. And as you draw, letting the position of your hand, perhaps the items or previous marks, guide the direction you might bend the line, working out from any new starting location. And mine here are single elbows. I find that gives me a little quick flow where I can have a strong starting line that just establishes direction, and a little more of a wispy second line after the bend to lightly feather it out onto the page and have that combination of strength and lightness start to play a role as the branching and extending organization helps to provide a visual sense of structure, some degree of figurative structure as we start to think of branching things like a tree, perhaps a plant or the wings of a butterfly, root systems, or anything else that might come to mind. And as the structure begins to grow, you can experiment with the way you bring those branches into the system, with the consistency of the elbow or bend, or perhaps letting it move through a couple of bends into tighter spaces, or just to find the mark that brings an ease to extending and working through the space here on the page. I find I like the brush stroke kind of movement of that two-line condition segment moving out through the space. And each one being kind of an opportunity to adapt within that moment. The extension having no predetermined or pre-configured direction to it. The bends, orientation, and alignment unique to each opportunity, able to grow long and extend far, or fit neatly into any space provided, expanding and contracting to start to organize the space here and let the mind play some of its good habits and games of matching patterns, of finding new links and connections in this freer, open territory. And it could find that the branching comes with a bit of repetition, perhaps stacking up, or closing in, or spiraling around. And if you recognize that starting to happen, just kind of to follow it through and see where it goes. Many repetitive systems tend to extend in a single direction or move along an arc, or fold themselves in, and eventually find an end. And you can always reposition at the midpoint or the end point of any line and just begin that journey again as we map these branching, crackling divisions through the page. If the space begins to get a little full at a certain tempo of marking these strokes, we can come into any location and bring our attention further into the mark, further into the act of making that line. Shrink it down a little bit, slow it down a little bit, let it begin to fill in all the little spaces we've formed, to let our eye and hand recalibrate to another speed and position of working. With the shrinking down, we can also bring a slowing down to the line so that our control doesn't wobble too much. And with that slowing, we can begin to connect it inward to our breath, to the alignment of our body. Breathing in through an extension of the bend and breathing out through the next. Letting the rhythm of the breath in and out to perhaps guide the unique and subtle variations with each new branch extension. The breath becoming perhaps an initiator on the rhythm, or perhaps a guide for the speed, whatever begins to suit your action and your motion, to have that internal connection between something that affects the whole body and this expression through our fingertips, through our pen or pencil, out into this visual field of lines, elbows, strong strokes, and feathery extensions. And in that space of breathing and drawing together, of focusing in to what is formed, adapting in each moment's expression, opening up our mind and our attention to feel that spontaneous organization that our internal and spatial awareness is able to perform with each moment, absorbing the field within the visual context, and adapting, drawing short or long, extending parallel, or wrapping around. Each a practice in connecting to what feeds in through our senses and our observation, and the way we respond and guide those responses through the practice and the longer form of repetition of a general technique or way of interacting here with the page. We can also draw the larger extension to practicing the ways we interact out in situations through our life. Perhaps use the guiding marks to meditate on what intentions and practices we can establish to bring that flowing and scalable, adaptable, productive structure to the way we meet many situations, whether large and impactful or small and nuanced. And depending on the size of the sheet of your paper and the speed of your breathing and marking, your page may be becoming quite dense or still have plenty of room to follow the branches around. And with a few more inhabitations in the deep breath space, maybe really slowing it down to feel the act of making those specific and arbitrary marks. Really come into a place of inhabitation and relaxation in this structure. Deeply breathing in and out through these filigree moments as we prepare to transition to finding form and shape within this system of folds, of light separations, of pinches and expansions. I'm starting to ask our eyes and our mind, what does it see? Using it as a guide for reading the situation here on the page, and then following it to begin to play in this opening up of space on the paper. You can continue with the same technique and practice, further refining density, narrowing your attention into specific regions that have formed, maybe with their own patterns and language. Or perhaps shift technique and focus and play in connecting branch areas, finding overlaps, extending highlights by working and reworking some of the major lines that stand out to the eyes, forming layers to the possible spaces, soft boundaries in the visual medium, or deep grooves that establish the network of connected marks, each free thoughts from a moment, now linked into a larger field, expanded through the page. Wrapping and entwining. And for me, there feels like in this space in my drawing, a thickness that is forming the folds of coral, or the folds of our mind machinery, the brain. Perhaps embracing some of that thickness with a new way of drawing, just adding layers to these branches. A good friend of mine who's a farmer in upstate New York sent me a picture last week of their very intense ice storm. It took me a few moments to even realize what I was looking at, but it was the branch of a tree, just a small one, size of a pinky finger, long, completely encased in this crystal about an inch thick of ice. And the image could have been a groove in a landscape, a canyon formed in the earth, or some kind of crystal dug out of the ground. But that extra layer, changing the perception and diameter of that branch, turning it into a new experience for a few days. Some part stressful and some part beautiful. Begin to give these branches here a thickening density that connects the space between each one. For me, just these little bumps. It could be an offset or just an ink or pencil heaviness, allowing what you see with your eyes and what that sparks in the imagination just to guide how you may continue to develop this little story in the small world here on the page. Perhaps with the analogy visually to trees or to butterflies or these other kind of natural systems that have these branching structures to them, we can begin to draw upon what comes to our memory as the guide for that inhabitation. And when the trajectory starts, for the ways of filling in and being within these loose boundaries of these branching structures, following it in each local moment and seeing where it leads and what expansions and contractions that may happen to offer that practice in adaptability here as we draw, that flexibility to take a simple system and maneuver through it to find some balance. And to let go a little bit of preconceptions as complexity brings change, uncertainty, and hopefully trains a bit of resilience. and curiosity. And as we might get very absorbed in the creative play space or the repetition of a technique, it's good to bring our attention back to our body, to our breath, and where we are, to not contract too far inwards, to check in, take a breath deep down, even to take a small break from drawing if necessary, to really fill in that space of the core, let it expand, filling the small cilia and web structure of our lungs with air to extract the oxygen and nutrients our blood needs, to exhale the built-up carbon dioxide and other trace gases that are no longer necessary. And to let that exchange guide the motion of our torsos, of our diaphragm, our shoulders, and sink back into that soft background rhythm of providing an exchange of atmosphere that supports our continued operation and fueling. To let go of any tension that can build up both in the positive and negative sides of engagement, whether that's a stress or a deep focus. Both can consume our attention and pull us away from equilibrium for a little while. And those moments can be productive, interesting, and opportunities for our awareness to check in. Check into our breath, to our actions, to slow down for a few moments and calibrate for that time where we give ourselves to get carried away, to dive deep into something, to create or to explore. And with our last few minutes, continuing to draw, if you're in a space of flow and extension, and with that drawing, starting to blink your eyes a little bit, open them wide, perhaps shut them tight for a moment, just bring them back into their operation of random, jumpy focus that helps to bring in and calibrate the world around us. Let them drift back from being hyper intent on the local moment of the drawing. Perhaps look around the space a little bit, or just glance them around the different parts of the drawing to start to take it all in, to extend your inhabitation to that external witness from the time it's spent as an internal participant. And as you approach any kind of stopping point for the current action, you can begin to bring some flexibility back to those hands, It may have been clenched on that pen or pencil for quite a while, and small movements. Feel some of the tightness, have some gratitude for that working system of small muscles and nerves that let us produce these drawings and share these actions. Thank you all for joining. I hope you've created your own little world or microcosm there as you unmap your mind and create a structure that brings new territory and new space for exploration and creativity out through the page and through your pen or pencil. I really enjoyed this exercise, and it led somewhere I really wasn't expecting when I started, and that's often the most enjoyable part of these, is that we can begin with just a few marks, track them around, explore, follow a technique, and end up with something that is a whole new world for us. Here on mine, I see ferns, I see the brain, I see coral or seaweed, all these natural things just floating there in the space of the page, coalescing from outside of my imagination, from the engagement of my subconscious through my body, through this medium here of drawing. And I hope you've made something fun too, or at least had a little bit of relaxation in listening to the exercise and following along and letting that pencil move around the page and just guide you in your expression. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up below. Let me know what you think down in the comments, and have a wonderful week. Draw well.